Coming up on CTV News tonight, residents unhappy about what zone they've been categorised in. And we ask what the future is for the Waimakariri district. Welcome to CTV News, I'm Rob Cope-Williams. There's still residents who are unhappy about what zone they've been categorised in. Some who have been green zoned believe they should be red and vice versa.
CTV News has received a number of comments from residents who believe they've been classified in the wrong zone. The government recently announced land would be categorised into red, green, orange and white zones. Orange and white zone areas will end up being either green or red. Green meaning the land can be rebuilt on and people in those areas have the go-ahead to repair or rebuild their homes, and red meaning the land will not be able to be rebuilt on. Today I spoke to one Spraydon resident who has major problems with her land, including a huge sinkhole in her backyard. She believes she should have been classified red rather than green.
After the February earthquake, I came home and I saw that I had a spring that had popped up out of the ground, and it goes about this high out and it's about this wide, and it ran for about 2 days. And so what I did and some of my friends is we dug trenches and the water flowed out of the property. But what I think happened is it took a lot of the garden. So 2 weeks later I looked out the window and found that I had a huge sinkhole, and I got that filled in a few weeks later.
She says she's not heard from Sarah.
Yeah, I've rung Sarah to find out what to do about it, but so far they can't give me any answers, and I'm a green zone property, so.
However, Sarah CEO Roger Sutton says people in this position will get a second chance for their land to be reassessed, but it will take time.
At this stage, we're trying to make some DVDs to try and explain why some areas were red and why some areas were green, so we can get an understanding about the different sort of engineering reasons about why different areas were judged red or green. And for a lot of people that's going to give them the information they need, but for other people at some stage they're going to want to talk to someone who can spend some time explaining about the particular ground characteristics in the area. But right now the engineers who can do that sort of stuff are out working the orange areas where there's hundreds and thousands of people, if you like, they can help, and that's really where the focus is at the moment. And so if people want individual conversations, they aren't going to happen for months and months, I'm afraid, because we've got to make sure the engineering resource goes to the places where they can help hundreds and thousands of people rather than single individual people. In the meantime, we're trying to produce those DVDs within the next couple of weeks, giving an explanation of those engineering issues.
It just keeps going. I understand that I'm not a priority as far as damage to my house or anything, but I want to sell my property and move on, and I'm in a position where I could just sell it as green, but it's definitely not a green property, so I don't see why it's difficult just to have an answer to what I need.
Gina says she's been told there are old riverbeds that lie around her suburb, and she thinks that this problem should be looked at more closely.
Waimakariri District Mayor David Ayres and CEO Jim Palmer have similar views for the future of their district.
Today I'm in Kaiapoi talking with David Ayres, the Mayor of Waimakariri, and Jim Palmer, Chief Executive of Waimakariri District Council. Front page of Thursday's paper. What was your feelings as Mayor of the district?
Well, I thought it was a bit premature, and I don't think it helped the people of Kaiapoi at all. I thought that it added to the area of uncertainty. It had a map there which simply showed information that's been available for months. It simply showed what we call Zone C, or only 2 of those Zone C areas, and the people of Kaiapoi have known for a long time that those land areas need land remediation, and it didn't even relate to the orange zones that they've got.
This is quite the second time that a surprise has hit Waimakariri, one being when the red zones in Christchurch were announced and Kaiapoi was in. Are you, as the Mayor, in tune with the government, in tune with Sarah?
I believe we are, but I think at times it is frustrating because of the time it takes. It's certainly not the first surprise we've had. The first one was on the 4th of September, but The issues really are that we know it well. So we know it's a difficult process. We know it takes a long time. We know that there are not only geotechnical factors to be considered, but economic factors as well. But I think the people of Kaiapoi really need to have clarity, and they need to have that clarity soon.
Jim, you're leading a process, a for a community. And you pick up the paper on Thursday morning and there it is, the zones. What was your feeling when you saw the paper on Thursday morning?
Certainly raised a number of questions for us, like it has for the community. We don't have certainty yet about the shape of Kaiapoi and its future, what the red zones, if there are, what they look like, where they'll be, and what impact that'll have on the community. So it's caused us a bit of concern in terms of people now becoming agitated and further questions about what the future for them and their community is.
You've led quite a different process from Christchurch. You've really taken ownership of the investment in the infrastructure and how you take a community with you. And it seems like twice now you've had the rug pulled out from under you. How does that sit with you when you're meant to all be working together?
It's been quite a challenge. Right from the 4th of September, we've worked extremely well with the community and all other participants in trying to rebuild Kaiapoi and Pines and Kairaki, and the community support's been tremendous. But we have had, it has been a changing landscape, both with further quakes, the need for investigation, the identification that the earthquake we had in September is a 1 in 100, not a 1 in 500 year quake, and that requires a re-evaluation. And we're supportive of that need to undertake that review to ensure we get the best long-term solution. That has meant, though, that the plan has had to change and change and change again. And at the moment, on the back of the current investigation, and once an announcement is made about the future of Kaiapoi, we're going to need to sit down and prepare a new plan for the restoration and development of Kaiapoi.
Christchurch police were kept busy over the weekend. At around 1:30 this morning, a vehicle travelling on State Highway 1 left the road and collided with a bank. The sole occupant of the vehicle, a male aged 68 years, died as a result of injuries received in the crash. Police from Amberley, assisted by the Serious Crash Unit, are investigating the cause of the crash. The State Highway has been a single lane opening and motorists can expect delays. And on Sunday at about 1:50 a.m, a man in his early 20s was stabbed at the Hornby Soccer Club rooms at Denton Park. As those attending the function at the clubs were leaving, they were approached by a group of about 8 males. A scuffle broke out and the man was stabbed in his side. As a result of the stab wounds, the male received hospital treatment and was released early this morning. Police would like to speak to anyone who was at the function or know any of the people involved in the altercation. Please contact, if you do know of any information, Detective Colin Bailey of the Christchurch South Police. His phone number is 363 2586, 363 2586. And thousands of people turned out to the Sarah Expo being held at the CBS Arena over the weekend. Residents were given easy access to bankers, insurers, realtors, builders, designers, developers, EQC, legal advice and seminars on building, buying and renting property. Sarah says there'll be more seminars covering similar topics in the future. But coming up after the break, we find out how Christchurch taxi companies are getting on post-quake. Welcome back. From today, taxis around the country will have to have the latest technology installed in them to keep drivers safe. However, Christchurch taxis have until May 2012.
Taxi drivers are the next victims to have their safety compromised by the Christchurch earthquake. It became mandatory today for cabs to install safety equipment, but after February's quake, Christchurch drivers have had their deadline extended till May next year.
From today, all taxis throughout New Zealand, except for Christchurch, have to have a NZTA approved camera installed in their vehicle. They need to have a duress alarm which has GPS tracking on it, and they also need to have a 24/7 call centre.
The company is not responsible for the installation, but drivers themselves, and without a constant stream of passengers and therefore income, it's difficult.
If we had the funding, we'd put them in now, obviously because of the safety features that offers us. But the costs on the individual drivers means that with the lack of work that they've got at the moment, they'd be under a lot of financial pressure.
Most of Blue Star's clients were crowds from AMI Stadium, but with the venue out of business and drivers losing passengers through not being able to operate in the central city, numbers have dwindled.
The work patterns changed quite a bit, and it's certainly not there in the volumes that it was in the past. We used to do really well servicing AMI with the Crusader games and then the Canterbury. You don't get anything like that now, especially from Rugby Park.
And their other key market, Central City passengers, no longer exists, making it even more difficult to secure funds for the safety equipment.
We certainly looked after the ranks there, and of course now there is no city, so those drivers have to move out to the suburbs. We've seen a big change in this Friday, Saturday nights, whereas everybody was going into the city because that's where they wanted to drink and be entertained. Now it's all spread out throughout the suburbs.
And like taxi fares, the equipment doesn't come cheap.
You get what you pay for. These things, if they're not working, then the driver can't work either, so you've got to have something that's going to be pretty reliable. Down at the bottom end, they're about $600, but then they go all the way up to about $1,800. And if you got one that was Aussie spec, for example, they're about $2,500.
But it's not all bad.
Some of our drivers have already put some cameras in, but the majority are looking to see, first of all, what other cameras are available out there, and we've got a chance to see how they've worked in other taxi companies now until the 1st of May, and also we've got a bit of time to save up for them.
The company had experienced a huge drop in airport transfers, especially in the international passenger market, but with the snow season arriving in the past week, it had picked up a little. Yet another hindrance hoped to be overcome before the May deadline rolls around.
As things pick up, and we're really hopeful that come December, January, that a lot of the work's returned by that stage. And we've got Ellerslie apparently to look forward to, and we do that exclusively, so that's going to really help us. So anybody that hasn't got the money by then, hopefully over Ellerslie will make up that difference.
St John Ambulance in Littleton has received a major donation of medical equipment.
Littleton's St John Ambulance Station has had a big boost with $25,000 worth of new equipment. Michael Evans from Tauranga-based shipping organisation Sea Trade New Zealand has a long association with the Port of Littleton and asked what he could do to help after the quakes.
We decided to raise some money with a few of our colleagues from around the world, so we had some donations from Japan, from France, from Argentina, from Holland, Belgium and even from Ecuador, and we accumulated it and we were able to buy these supplies for the St John here in Littleton.
The new gear includes 2 defibrillators, pulse oximeters, 5 handheld radios, a marine VHF radio and a bone drill.
As we understand it, the last time there was a major quake, that the 2 ambulances were not even in Littleton, so some of this equipment will stay here in the base as I understand it and can be used by the volunteers as a sort of a secondary first response for the people of Littleton. So I'm hopeful it'll be put to good use, but of course we also hope that you don't have that experience of another earthquake either.
St John says the donated gear will enable its Littleton station to be more resilient in times of emergency.
A part of the donation will actually provide what we call a MCR, a major incident cache, which is a term for equipment that's packaged up into specialist boxes. And those boxes will be at Littleton Station. So what that will allow is a ready store of emergency supplies for Littleton in the event that it may be isolated for some time.
While in North Canterbury, Pete Smith took the time to catch up with the 1987 World Cup winning coach Griswali at his beloved Glenmark club.
Our travels through North Canterbury have brought us to the landmark. It's the Glenmark Football Club. Catching up with the selector of the 87 winning New Zealand World Cup team. Hasn't happened since. Alec, question for you. What you're seeing on the radar at the moment? Are we going to have a side good enough to win in 2011?
Well, I suppose it's going to be who's picked. And I think there are a number of players at the moment that are going to need a bit of time to get themselves right before this World Cup kicks underway.
Is it a blend between youth and experience that you really need to win a World Cup?
Well, I think you need a wee bit of youth there for the enthusiasm to put into it, And of course, I've always said you've got to have experience as well. But I just wonder whether we've got players there in certain positions that are going to be sharp enough.
What about cover? 7, 8, 9, 10. Not strong, are we?
No, I think we've known that for some time, of course, and whether we're any further ahead or not, I suppose these Tri-Nations games may help, although the teams that are coming up against don't seem to be out there or putting their best teams out. It's going to make it harder, but it's an opportunity.
If you'd been the boss, would you have gone with the Tri-Nations this year, or what would you have done? What would you have liked to have seen?
Well, I'm not talking about being a boss, but I think I would love to have seen a South Island trial, a North Island trial, a North-South game, and then a final trial.
How close to the World Cup?
Well, about a final trial, about a fortnight out from the World Cup.
And you go with what you see then?
You pick on form.
Winning a World Cup, history doesn't count, does it?
History doesn't mean a thing.
No, but the whole country talks SBW. What have you made of the man, mate?
Well, he's there. We're still, I think, they're still sort of playing around with him a wee bit to see where he can fit in. He's proved a few things, but I think he's still got a lot of things to prove as well.
Is he a 12 or 13 to you?
Well, I haven't seen much of him at 13, haven't seen a lot of him at 12, I suppose. But I'd say from what I've seen, he's probably a bit at 12.
Just final thoughts. Had you been the Crusader coach, how would you have handled that last season, mate?
Very, very difficult. They had a hell of a trip. And, every game away didn't make it easy.
And in the end, it was a marvellous campaign, wasn't it?
Oh, look, you've got to give credit where it's due, and they did exceptionally well.
Yeah, they faced circumstances you wouldn't have ever dreamt of.
Well, that's right. I mean, we only had trips sort of to Blenheim and back. These guys travel all over the world to campaign.
Yeah. You're still looking world champ, and you'll be involved with the World Cup. You'll go to some of it?
We'll have a look around. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah, that's the thoughts from Grizz as the trucks go down the main North Road here out at the Glenmark Club.
And coming up after the break, your local weather. Welcome back. Thousands of people gathered on London Street in Littleton on Friday night for the Littleton Harbour Festival of Lights. The event was a long time coming, as it was a case of third time lucky for the organisers. The summer festival was cancelled after the February quake, and the winter festival was postponed following the June 13 quakes. But while London Street has a few gaps, all went smoothly on Friday night, with the main stage serving a steady lineup of Littleton talent. Buskers showed their talents at the other end of the street, while market stalls fed the masses. At 7:20, the fireworks display, choreographed to music, lit up the skies. The mild weather meant the street was packed for much of the night, but a dose of rain at about 9:30 sent the families home to bed, while the younger crowd partied on. And although the United States has reached a compromise, the ramifications for us here in New Zealand are still very real.
It is an emergency situation in the US, and the other countries of the world, Rob, are simply bystanders while we watch the Americans trying to put together a deal which, in terms of their democracy, might be successful within the next several hours. But what it means for the Americans is that they want to lift their debt ceiling. They need that approved within a day or so in order to pay their public services, both at home and all around the world, including their armies abroad.
So they're broke?
They are very much in debt as a government. 14 trillion is the current ceiling. They want to put it up to 3 trillion. The other party, the Republican Party, wants to see cuts of about 3 trillion. So we've had an impasse now for several days, and what it means is that sometime in the next few hours you would expect them to come together, but they have taken the world to a brink of another return to a financial crisis. Nobody wants to go back to that. It's not so long ago, 2008, when we saw the American economy crumble, and they were losing 800,000 jobs a month, and households over there lost $5 trillion in household wealth, and the rest of the world held its breath and money dried up. Nobody wants to go back there. And what does it mean for New Zealand? It simply means that if they do not do this, interest rates will go up, the financial markets will contract, equity markets will fall, and the costs of everything in terms of our exports will be severely affected, because our currency will go through the roof. And as of today, the currency is pushing towards 88 cents US, post-float high set almost every day now, And if it did happen, if there was a debt limit crisis which couldn't be resolved, we would see the Kiwi dollar probably through 90 cents and moving higher. So there is a cost to that. There's a cost to everything when things moved at this speed as well. So we would see interest rates up in New Zealand, although it'd be very difficult for the Reserve Bank to raise interest rates if the currency was soaring through the roof. So we wait and see what happens, and we trust the Americans will return to some level of good sense in the next 24 hours, and all will be fixed. We'll kick them a little bit in the rump and say thanks very much again for causing a problem of this magnitude. We don't need it. You don't need it. You need to get over it and get together and sort this out.
Here's Sasha now with your weather.
Evening all. A light westerly airflow brought sunny skies and pleasant temperatures of 13 or 14 degrees for most of Canterbury today. Arthur's Pass reached 11 degrees, a little warmer than recent days, and Greymouth had 13. Looking ahead to the weather tomorrow, mostly fine and sunny with afternoon northeasterlies and a high of 13 for Kaikoura. Note that low down to -2, making for a frosty start in the morning. Henma Springs sees a low of -3 tonight, then after a crunchy start underfoot, it's a lovely winter's day with clear skies, light winds and a high of 12 degrees. Overnight frost for North Canterbury too. Rangiora and Kaiapoi can look forward to plenty of sunshine tomorrow though, with light northeasterly winds and a high of 13. -1 overnight in Christchurch, giving way to a clear sunny winter's day. Light morning winds tend northeasterly in the afternoon and you're looking at a high of 13 degrees. A frosty start for Ashburton tomorrow, then it's a sunny winter's day with blue skies, afternoon northeasterlies and a high of 13 degrees. Timaru gets its share of the good weather as well. A little warmer overnight, down to 0 degrees there. Then we see mostly clear skies, light winds and a high of 13 degrees for your Tuesday. Looking at our other areas now, cold overnight resulting in a morning visit from Jack Frost in Colverdon, Darfield, Methven, Akaroa and Arthur's Pass. It's a fine day with clear skies and light winds. On the west coast, Greymouth sees a bit more cloud and a high of 13. Looking ahead for Canterbury, Wednesday and Thursday are looking fine and mostly sunny. Winds remain light and northeasterly. Temperatures drop overnight, resulting in those morning frosts continuing. Thanks for joining me from the weather team here. Have a lovely evening.
That's your news and weather. I'm Rob Copelands.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.